Okay, so here's rational expressions and equations, quiz. So on the very first problem, it says simplify each expression and state any excluded values. So these two, you guys, are rational expressions with addition and subtraction. So what we first want to do is we have to make sure we factor everything we can. I see we can factor out that, so 3x over x squared minus 1. You could take the square root of x squared for x. And it's going to be square root of 1, which is 1. So it's going to be plus or minus 1. Plus 5 over x minus 1. Okay, so you guys just have to remember x squared minus 1 can be factored into x plus 1 and x minus 1. Now, we have to find a common denominator. I notice that the LCD is x plus 1 and x minus 1, which means that this one right here, this one's missing x minus or x plus 1. So rewrite this one. This one's fine because it already has the least common denominator. The one with the red arrow, it needs to still have an x plus 1 in the denominator. So we need to multiply top and bottom by x plus 1. Okay, so then we're going to get 3x plus, now remember, 5 times x and 5 times 1. So we're going to get plus 5x plus 5 all over the LCD, which is just x plus 1, x minus 1. And our final answer is going to be, remember, collect like terms, right? Collect like terms. So 8x plus 5 all over x plus 1 and x minus 1. I forgot to include this. Do you see where it says state the excluded values? So look back to our original problem, or when we factored it, this one right here, look back to this one. X cannot be -1 or 1. And the reason why is, you know the denominator cannot equal to 0, which means you have to set both of those. Both of them cannot equal to 0. And that would happen when x is -1 or x is 1. So there's that one. Moving on to this example. Again, anytime you guys are adding or subtracting a rational expression to a rational expression, have to find the least common denominator. So first we gotta factor. I noticed we could factor that one. So 3x over x minus 2 minus 5x plus 4 all over x. Two things that multiply to 2, but when added gives you -3. That is going to be -2 and -1. Okay, so let's do excluded values. Okay, excluded values, I see that it cannot be 2 and it can't be 1, right? Because here's the two denominators I'm looking at. So x minus 2, that can't be 0, or we have x minus 1 can't be 0. This is just me solving it out, you guys. X can't be 1, x can't be 2. Okay, some people could see that, but if you need to see the work done, there's the work done for that problem. Okay, now we gotta find the least common denominator, right? So the LCD is x minus 2 and x minus 1. right? Because when I look at this one, I'm like, okay, it's missing an x minus 1, and this one, it's not missing anything. So x minus 2 and x minus 1. So for this one, it's missing an x minus 1. So that means I need to multiply top and bottom by x minus 1. And then this one is fine because it's not missing any denominator. Okay, so that means need to distribute this to that one and that to that one. So we are going to get 3x squared, because 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. Okay, minus 5x plus 4. Remember, this minus sign has to go to both. That minus sign has to go to both of those. All over our LCD, which is x minus 2, x plus 1. So let's simplify 3x squared minus 3x. Remember, distribute this negative to both. Minus 5x minus 4 all over x minus 2, x plus 1. And you guys are going to get 3x squared minus 8x minus 4 all over x minus 2 and x plus 1. Okay, and that trinomial on top is not factorable, which means this is your guys' final answer. Okay, so there's that one, you guys. All right, when we simplify these rational expressions, notice that its division and multiplication was rational expressions. So first order of business is, let's just flip this right now. Let's just flip this to get it over with. So 3x minus 9, x squared minus x minus 20 times, and let's just flip it, or take the reciprocal. All right, now it's time to factor everything out. So let's factor. Okay, I'll color coordinate this for you guys. This one, I see we can take a 3 out from both 3x and minus 9. So 3 parentheses x minus 3. Okay, this one, I see it's a trinomial, so let's factor out that trinomial into its two binomials. Two things that multiply to negative 20, but when added gives you guys negative x. That is going to be negative 5 and positive 4. Next one. Okay, so this one, right? X squared minus 25. I notice x squared is square rootable and 25 square rootable. So when you have perfect squares like that, you guys, under subtraction, square root of x squared, x, square root of 25, 5, and it's going to be plus or minus. And then this last one, factor out that trinomial. Two things that multiply to negative 15, but when added gives you guys 2. That is going to be plus 5 and minus 2. Now, once you guys factor out everything, now it's a good time to find your guys' excluded values, okay? It's a good time, once you factor everything out, it's good to find your excluded values. Okay, so look at your denominators, right? Right here, x cannot be 5, because then we'll have 5 minus 5, which is 0, which is bad. So x can't be 5. Right here, x can't be negative 4. Right here, x can't be negative 5. And right here, x can't be 2. Now, once we stated our excluded values, now it's time to just cancel. We're purely just canceling. This one could cancel off with that one. This one could cancel off with that one. And that looks to be it. So then your guys' final answer is 3 times x minus 3 all over x plus 4, x minus 2. Okay, there's 2a. Now we're off to b. Okay, so first we have to factor, right? So 2x plus 1 all over. Okay, this one right here, that could factor. So you know that's 3 and 1, and that's negative 1 and 1. So 3x, x. Now we just have to think of what combination of negative 1 and 1 will give us negative 2. Well, if this is minus 1 and this is plus 1, then these two on the outside, which is negative 3, and these on the inside will give us 1. So negative 3 and 1 will give us negative 2 because you add those together. So that looks good. Multiplying 3x plus 1 all over, okay, this one again, right? Factor that one out. It's a binomial, but both of those I see are perfect squares. Square root of 4x squared is 2x, and the square root of 1 is 1. So plus or minus of those. And there's the factors. Now all we gotta do is just cancel. This one cancels off with that one. This one cancels off with that one. So all we have is 1 all over x minus 1, 2x minus 1. And sorry, I forgot again. Once you guys factor it all right there in that step, then that's when you can find your excluded values. So now this one's a bit more challenging, right? Because you're like, okay, what would x be for there in order for it to be 0? What would x be for there? What would x be for there? And what would x be for there? So you know 3x plus 1 cannot be 0. X minus 1 can't be 0. 2x plus 1 can't be 0, and 2x minus 1 can't be 0. So let's solve for all of those. Minus 1, divide by 3. X can't be negative 1/3. Plus 1, x cannot be 1. Minus 1s. Divide both by 2. X cannot be negative 1/2, and plus 1, x can't be 1/2. So those are all your excluded values. You're just setting the denominators, each one, right? Each one in the denominator, each entity, it cannot be 0. So that's why you have to solve for that stuff. So it can't be negative 1/3, it can't be 1, it can't be negative 1/2, and it can't be 1/2. Okay, so those are those two problems. And remember, guys, just practice, get this stuff down. You should be okay. All right, here's our solving equations, right? Remember to look for extraneous solutions. Okay, first order of business is you got to factor. So x plus 1 plus 3 over x plus 3, oopsies, equals negative 2x squared. Factor out this trinomial. What two things multiply to 3, but when added together gives you 4. It's plus 3 and plus 1. Alright, so excluded values, right? Remember, the denominator cannot be 0. So right here, x can't be negative 1 for that situation, and for here, x cannot be negative 3. Now, you guys could do this too, like I did the previous problem. You know x plus 1 cannot be 0, and x plus 3 can't be 0. I don't show this step, you guys, because it's just the opposite, but when you guys have like the one from previous where it's like a fraction, you need to show that step. But I don't show this step because I think it's very obvious that negative 1 into here would make that whole thing 0, and negative 3 right there would make that whole thing 0. Okay, those are excluded values. Now LCD, x plus 1 and x plus 3. Now remember, after we find the LCD, when we are solving for rational equations, you have to multiply every single part by the LCD. So x out of x plus 1, multiply that by the LCD, plus 3 over x plus 3. Multiply that by the LCD. Multiply that by the LCD. And then we can start canceling. So cancel, 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 and this one, we can cancel those. So all we're left with is x and x plus 3, plus 3, x plus 1, and negative 2x squared. Okay, we're going to distribute. So we're going to get x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 3. All is equal to negative 2x squared. The left-hand side, combined like terms, we're going to get x squared plus 6x plus 3 is equal to negative 2x squared. Set this equal to 0, so we add both sides by 2x squared. 3x squared plus 6x plus 3. Okay, something I noticed, I see that all of these could be factored out by a 3, right? You can pull out a 3 from each one of those terms. So 3, x squared plus 2x plus 1. Now, disregard that 3, and now let's just focus on the inside of that, inside of the parentheses, that trinomial. Let's factor out that trinomial. So 3, x and x. What two things multiply to 1, but to add together gives you 2? Well, x plus 1 and x plus 1. So our answer for this one is going to be x is going to equal to negative 1. Alright, so now when you guys get an answer, right, be careful because you have to look at the excluded values to make sure your answer is not that. Well, notice that negative 1, and it already says x can't be negative 1. So that is what we call, this is an extraneous solution. And since that's the only answer we found, there's nothing else. So that means We have no solution. Now, this is just a side note. Let's just say some way we found x is -1 and x is 2. So -1 would be an extraneous solution, but then our only answer, if this were the case, would be x is equal to 2. So if you found an extraneous solution, that's not an answer, the other one is. But since we don't have another answer for this problem, that just means we have no solution. Okay, so there's that one. Part B. Alright, so everything's already in factored form. So now let's just get our excluded values done with. X cannot be, right here. I can see x can't be -3, because that whole thing would be 0 then. And right here, x cannot be 2. So those are 2 excluded values. Now we can just focus on getting the LCD. LCD is x plus 3 and x minus 2. Now, since everything's in factored form, let's multiply every single part by the LCD. So x plus 3, multiply that by the LCD. Four out of x minus 2, multiply that by the LCD. And lastly, this part right here, multiply that by the LCD. Okay, time to cancel. X plus 3's cancel, x minus 2 cancels, and all these cancel. So x times x minus 2 minus 4 times x plus 3 is equal to -5x squared. Okay, distribute this to both, distribute this to both. X squared minus 2x minus 4x minus 12 is equal to -5x squared. Collect like terms on the left-hand side of the equal sign, so x squared minus 6x minus 12 is equal to -5x squared. Add 5x squared to both sides. And we're going to get 6x squared minus 6x minus 12 is equal to 0. Now we got to solve. So one thing I notice again, I see that both of these can be factored out by a 6. So 6 out of x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so now let's just factor out the trinomial on the inside of the parentheses. So 6. Two things that multiply to -2, but when added gives you -1. So we're going to get -2 and +1. So x is going to equal to -1 and 2. Now, we have to check our excluded values, right? To make sure our answer is not an excluded value. Okay, everyone take a look, right? There's that one. Okay, I don't like this humongous. Okay, so there's that excluded value, right? Notice how that's a solution of ours, right? So that's an extraneous solution, which means that cannot be an answer. So our only answer is x is equal to -1. Okay. So those are those problems right there. Now, here's a bonus one, okay? So in this bonus one, what you guys have to do is you have to get this this to be a common denominator and this one to have a common denominator. So looking only at this numerator, okay? Looking only at that numerator, we have to get both of them to be a common denominator. So 12 over x minus this 6, this is really 6 over 1. This is missing a common denominator of x, so we have to multiply top and bottom by x. So that's going to be 12 over x minus 6x over x. And that is going to equal 12 minus 6x all over x. Okay, that one's gotten over with. Now I'm going to be focusing on this denominator, okay? This one also, you must get common denominators, okay? So that's really 8 over 1 minus 16 over x. This one right here, that's missing an x in the denominator, so you have to multiply top and bottom by x. So you're going to get 8x over x minus 16 over x, and that's going to equal to, we already have an equal sign for all that. So we're going to get 8x minus 16 all over x. Okay, gonna move this down over here. Alright, notice that this one's a division sign, right? It's a division sign between two rational expressions. So 12 minus 6x, this is just the numerator portion, divided by this whole thing. 8x minus 16 all over x equals 12 minus 6x over x. We make that division sign into a multiplication, but then that means you have to take the reciprocal or flip it the other one. Now this looks like something very familiar to us, right? So before we even begin, we have to factor out everything from this one right here. Okay, notice how we have a minus 6x, right? It's 12 minus 6x. I do not usually like the variable to be after the constant, so factor out a negative 6 from both. So we're going to get x minus 2 right there, all over x, times x over 8 out of x minus 2. Now, since we factored out everything, it's important that right now, right here, you guys write your excluded values. X cannot be, from this one, x cannot be 0, and from this one, x cannot be 2. So after you state your excluded values, then now it's time to just cancel, right? So let me just zoom into the portion that we have. Okay, these cancel, and negative 6 over 8. So I see that, right? You could divide 2 into both of those, so it'd be negative 3 over 4. So your final answer for that one, you guys, if you do decide to do a bonus, is negative 3 over negative 3/4. Okay, that's it, you guys. Hopefully this helps you guys out. Just try your best, and you guys try your best and you work your hardest, you will be successful in this classroom. Trust me on that. If you try your best and you work, you'll be fine. All right, good luck, you guys, and study up, okay?